Hi, everybody. I hope you are having a good start to your week. Popping in today to talk a little bit about a quote that makes its way around our sort of mental health anxiety community a lot. And I don't know about you, but I know when I used to read it or things like it, because it's been adapted a lot, it always used to make me feel sort of bad about myself. Like I was choosing anxiety. And I want to talk about why it's wrong and look at it from a nervous system sort of point of view. So the quote itself is from a beautiful book, Man's Search for Meaning. Really gorgeous book. This is filled with all sorts of amazing life lessons and quotes. But this one I think was just interpreted wrong. And then the kind of mental health community, self help community took it and ran. And how it is portrayed is not how our bodies actually work. So let me see if you've heard this quote before or something similar to it. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So, lovely quote, right? Let me read the first two sentences again. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Okay. How many of you choose to have anxiety or choose to have panic, right? I think over my life, I can't even think about like the number of how many panic attacks I had over my life, especially in my 20s. And I did not choose any of them. I would never make that conscious choice, right? The thing about anxiety is that it's an automatic response. A stress response, when we're talking particularly about the stress response, right, which is our fight or flight response, is automatic. It happens without the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, being on board, right? It is initiated because of a tiny part of our brain called the amygdala that is known as our brain's watchdog that determines if that stimulus is dangerous or not dangerous to us, right? So we can change that. We can change that over time, but we're talking about in the moment. In the moment, if your brain, that part of the brain, thinks that something is dangerous, you're going to have a stress response. You don't get a space. You don't get a pause. You don't get to be like, let's just sit back and think about this. I wish we did, right? But a more correct way of wording this would be after that response, we have a choice on our actions. Okay. But the response itself, not a conscious choice, not something that we get to decide. So let's talk about this a little bit from the nervous system point of view. So we know that there's some kind of stimulus, right? And that stimulus can be something you think, it can be something you see, it can be a bodily sensation or a reaction to it, it can be something you hear, right? It can be something that you smell, it can be a memory, it can be an emotion. Like there's a lot of things that can trigger our stress response. And for most of us that have dealt with debilitating anxiety and chronic anxiety, right? Remember, we're stuck in a survival state. So we're hyper vigilant to a lot of things. So our stress response is reactive. It is highly reactive. So what triggers someone else's stress response is probably not the same as what's going to trigger ours, right? If you've ever heard like a big sound and then had panic or anxiety, right? Had that stress response, it's just a good sign that your nervous system is more reactive. That stress response is more reactive. Okay. So that isn't a choice. Like we don't get stimulus response. We get stimulus, nervous system response, and then the choice to actually like a conscious choice, right? So talking about an example, say the stimulus is um, you are walking across the street and there is somebody walking a dog and that dog is like really pulling and maybe you're afraid of dogs and you see that stimulus, maybe the dog even gets away from the person, and it comes running towards you. you're going to have a stress response, right? You doesn't mean that you don't get a choice to change the action from it, right? Where you're like, okay, let's not panic. Let's take a step back. Can I remove myself? Is there a fence nearby? Do I have dog spray? Can I, just talk to the dog? Can I make myself big? Like all of these things that we would think of. But after or before those thoughts, you've already had a stress response, right? Your heart is racing, your might be getting sweaty, you might have had a hot flash because your body has released adrenaline to be able to help you with those actions afterwards. So, this is the way that our body was designed for survival. It was designed so that there isn't time for pause in between there. If you saw the dog running towards you and then just had a space to think about it, right? It's not going to give us what we need to potentially have to run away from it or maybe even fight it, right? Um, and so we need that automatic response to be able to then do what we have to do for it. And our actions are when what we actually have a conscious decision afterwards. But the way that this is worded and the way that it's kind of taken in the self-help world is like there's a stimulus, and then you get to decide if you're going to be anxious about it. And so it's just mind over mood, right? Like mind over matter. Just outthink your anxiety. Just don't be stressed. Just don't be nervous. Just relax. And I just wanted to affirm to you that if your body doesn't work like that, it shouldn't. That's not the way our bodies are designed. So you're not doing anything wrong. You are not broken. You're not weak for not being able to stop that stimulus. That or that response is automatic. Okay. You don't have a choice in that response in the moment. And that's exactly how all of us are designed to work. It's just with us, we tend to have more reactive stress responses. And that we can do something about, right? We know there's lots of things that can help with the reactivity of our stress response. And there are things that we can do to help change what the amygdala decides is dangerous. But in the moment, you don't get time to think about it and just kick your feet up and go, I'm not going to be anxious. So if you ever see a quote like that and a thought of that too, um, I hope that gives you a little bit of reassurance. Okay. So still beautiful book, lots of great things in it. I definitely don't want to knock it because what a very interesting man and I mean some of the things in it are just so beautiful. But yeah, it's definitely not how the body is designed. And so when you see quotes like that, please don't take it like you are doing anything wrong. Your body is working the way that it is to try to survive, right? And we can't just put a pause on it to decide if we're going to be anxious or not. Okay. Now, what we can do is change our actions after the stress response. And of course, as I said before, we can do things to change the reactivity of our stress response, and we can change what our brain thinks is differently. But in the moment when you have a stress response and the thinking part of your brain kicks in, then we can do something about it. The actions that we do after a stress response help determine what the stress response is going to be like for it. Am I going to feel anxious for a couple of minutes? Is it just a physical thing? Am I going to go full blown panic and then have rebound anxiety, right? Because if you can feel the sensations of the anxiety and that stress response, and then go, okay, I just had a stress response, right? I'm not in any danger. Am I angry right now? Do I feel like running away? Like, am I having a fight response? Am I having a flight response? Okay, I'm having a flight response. So I know, I can run up and down the stairs a couple of times. I can stand up and shake out my whole body. I can jump a little bit. I can do something physical. I can do a little bit of EFT tapping to be able to help my body return to homeostasis quicker. Right. If I'm having a fight response, I know that I can, hit a boxing bag a couple of times. I can, or for a few minutes, I shouldn't say a couple of times for a few minutes. I can do a wall push. I can do a pillow push. I can take my pillow and hit my bed a couple of times, right? There are things that I can do to help process this quicker, be able to finish the arousal cycle and get my body back to a state of homeostasis. Once I have a couple of minutes of that release, then I can say to myself, okay, you're safe. You're not in any danger even though that was uncomfortable, you weren't in any danger, and be able to again bring the body to homeostasis. That's when we take the deep breaths. That's when we do those kind of calming talks after we've had a chance to process some of that energy. Okay. So that we have a choice of instead of having the sensations of anxiety and then doubling down on that and being like, I'm in danger. Oh my gosh, this is really scary. Maybe there is something seriously wrong with me. What am I reacting to? This is never going to change. It's never going to stop. And again, that thinking part of the brain, remember, kicks in and asks, are we actually in danger? And so we can say, nope, just had a stress response. Like, this is just something that my body reacts to. I know it's a fight response. I'm going to go do something with it, right? The body will calm down quicker. If we go, oh my gosh, I might be like, I'm really in danger. This feels really scary. I don't feel safe, da 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 da, and just kind of freeze. Sometimes we can have that cyclic anxiety, right? Where the body's like, okay, I was right the first time. Let's release more adrenaline. And so that is what we have a choice of, our actions once we have the stress response. And that can really make what anxiety is to you, right? Where, especially at the beginning, when we are more reactive, before you've done the work to kind of lower the reactivity of your stress response, being able to be like, oh, okay, like this is anxiety and it sucks and I don't like it. Let me do something with it. And then it's going to leave and your body's going to learn I can activate and I can deactivate, which is regulation in a nutshell, right? And then everything is okay instead of going down into, cyclic anxiety or rebound anxiety. So that's where the choice comes in. Okay. So anyway, I was just something I was thinking of the other day because I know I used to read that quote and be like, oh, what is the choice? Like who would choose this, right? And so I just wanted to reassure anybody who has seen that as well that it's automatic and you don't have that choice, but you do get to choose the actions afterwards, and that can make a big difference. Okay. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions and take good care. Have a good week, everybody.